Hello and welcome. This is a brief tutorial on my controls. I have yet to actually try Elite with the default controls, but I have heard that people can find them confusing. When I initially started the game, I ran across a review on Steam that recommended some particular settings within the controls. So I'm going to go over my defaults and how I've been playing the game, and hopefully this helps some people out. Now this is partially based off of what I saw on that Steam review, and partially based off of some defaults from one of the voice pack mods. It was set up to use certain keys, and I modified my key bindings to match those. And I grew to really like that, and it added some new functions to the keyboard that I had yet to try. So the first big thing that was recommended was to change the mouse x-axis from roll to yaw. This, of course, means that if I move the mouse left and right, I'm not going to be rolling. I'm going to be simply turning left and right. Now I will get to the roll keys, which are below, but they are Q and E. I don't think most of this was modified. Sensitivity and dead zone, all this information would be dependent on your own setup, but it's probably not something you would need to modify. This mouse widget will show you a little arrow around your crosshair, if you will. I'm not sure that is the appropriate term, but it will show you a little arrow around your crosshair showing where the mouse is currently located. That makes more sense once you're playing the game. I personally like that on. So for flight rotation, I don't think I modified any of this. Although, I did mention roll left and roll right are Q and E. Those may not have been default. For flight thrust, thrusting left and thrusting right are A and D. Thrusting up and down is W and S. I like having control of up and down on W and S, although you might argue that you want to go forward and backward with W and S. But since that is movement that is controlled by your main throttle, which you can set and you will continuously move forward or backwards, these are what I would say temporary. I'm only going to thrust left as long as I'm holding A. I'm only going to thrust right as long as I'm holding D. So I'm going to be moving forward anyways if my throttle is up. So I like being able to move up and down on W and S. It feels more natural to do those while I'm also moving left or right. And thrusting forward and backward, the only time I use either of those is when I'm docking. I will set my throttle to 0 and then use these for kind of fine-tuning. You know, you hold R as long as you need to move forward. Let's see. Okay, this one was interesting. So the way I understand this, I set it to full range. That's how to map the throttle axis to speed. This might not be the setting I'm thinking of, actually. Yes, that's not the setting I'm thinking of. My fault. I believe, yes, full range means you can pull the throttle backwards, and after it goes to 0, you can go negative to reverse. The increased throttle and decreased throttle I have set to the mouse axis. This is what I was thinking of, however. Throttle increments. So, whenever I move the mouse wheel forward or backwards one click, it should move 10% or 12.5% or any of these. The Steam review that I saw recommended 25%. However, I have a mouse wheel that I can unlock, so I simply unlock it, flick the wheel in the direction I want, whether I want to increase or decrease throttle, and then I click the button again once it is at the point that I'm satisfied with. I think this would be very frustrating if you had a typical mouse wheel that you could not unlock, so choosing one of these settings would make it more comfortable to throttle up or down, so you would not have to continuously roll for 30 seconds. Now, these are keys that were not all set by default. I believe set speed to 0 is, but I don't believe all these are set by default. These are the keys that were used on the voice program that I was using, and I've grown accustomed to them. So set speed to 25% numpad 1, 50% numpad 2, 75% numpad 3, and 100% on numpad plus. Now your negatives here will be reverse. So similarly, 7, 8, and 9 for negative 25, 50, and 75, and numpad minus for negative 100. Those are very easy to find. It's hard to accidentally hit one that you don't want to. And set speed to 0, I believe, is defaulted as X. I'm happy with that. Now, personally, I have not bothered with any of this. Disable flight assist is probably Z by default. If not, I do like that. You can change whether you want to hold it or toggle it. I've left it on hold and I'm happy. Engine boost. As it says, this uses the energy from the engine capacitor to overcharge the main drives, providing a temporary boost in acceleration, maximum velocity, and maneuverability. Tab, for me, is a perfect key. Now, frame shift drive is J, and frame shift drive to super cruise is numpad slash. Numpad slash was used by the voice program. I've grown accustomed to that. It's another key that's really easy to find, and you're not going to be using it all that often, so it doesn't really matter if it's kind of further away, or if you have to remove your hand from the mouse for a moment. It's not that big of a deal. And the reason I think it's important to have a Super Cruise button is because if you only want to go into Super Cruise and not actually make a jump in hyperspace, then you can't have anything targeted. If you do have a destination targeted, it will tell you now you have to align yourself with that, and then it's going to force you to jump to a different system or something. You don't want to do that. You can just engage directly into Super Cruise, and that avoids that issue. So I think it's important to have a button for that. And here we have targeting, select target ahead, cycle next ship. All these are self-explanatory. The main thing I use is T, although these are helpful. Targeting the next hostile ship or the highest threat. Those kinds of things are helpful. Or even just the next ship in general, in case you're not in a hostile environment. I have yet to do anything with Wingman, although my buddy is about to acquire this game, so I think it's about time that we will experiment with that. I don't see any problem with these keys, because that seems like something that you're not going to be doing all that often, and these are also easy keys to find. Same with this, I have yet to actually do anything with these. Now, cycle next subsystem. I have this set to I. What this is it allows you to target the subsystems of a ship. So I can explicitly target a ship's drive, or their power distributor, or power plant, or whatever, I can explicitly target those systems and try to destroy them. So I do like this. Obviously, I don't have a previous subsystem button, because when I get to what I want to target, I just stop pressing it. And even if I decide I want to go back through, they don't have that many subsystems. I hit the button a few more times. It's not that big of a deal. This is kind of up to you what you like. I like leading because this shows you where you need to aim, where you need to lead in order to hit them when it comes to projectiles. I'm reading trailing here because I've never actually done that. That is interesting. That seems like it's too easy for my taste. Trailing will move the gunfight itself to take lead into account, so placing it on the target will result in an accurate shot. So it actually moves, from your perspective, it actually moves the ship to where the leading target would show up. Whoops. To where the leading target would show up. I can't say... I like the idea of having to actually lead. It feels more authentic, but that's a cool feature. Target next system en route. I actually forgot that I had that button. That's useful if you're planning a large trek across multiple systems and need to stop at a station to refuel or something. That's a quick way to retarget the system. As M. Cycle next fire group and previous fire group on period and comma. Those are, I believe, default. Primary and secondary fire should be mouse 1 and mouse 2. Deploy hardpoints, I think, is default to you. But that's another key that, even if you're doing combat, you're not going to be hitting it that often. You deploy your hardpoints and you fight. You're not, deploying them and putting them away over and over in the middle of combat. And this is up to you if you want to say my fire button is 1 and 2. So if I were to click 1 or 2, this would automatically deploy my hard points. So you don't actually need the key to deploy them if you have that on. I still use the key regardless. So silent running, this is a kind of feature that you only need in rare circumstances. The delete key is a very easy key to find. It is, at the bottom left of its own little group of 6 keys. So that's an easy one to find even without looking at the keyboard. And it's going to be used so rarely that it's not that big of a deal. Deploy heatsink, I've never actually messed with, but that seems like a reasonable key if you're hovering around WASD. Ship light's another thing that's not happening that often, but likewise with delete. Insert is directly above delete. Easy to find. Sensor zoom, same idea. Page up and page down. Those kind of make sense. Very easy keys to find because where insert and delete are on the left of that group, page up and page down are the right of that group. Now, diverting power to engines, weapons, systems, and to balance. Those are all set to the arrows. These arrows are set up this way for a reason, because in your ship's HUD, the up arrow corresponds to engines, the right arrow corresponds to weapons, the left arrow corresponds to systems. In other words, it is set up in a design where the top of it is engines, the right of it is weapons. So it makes sense to have those corresponding arrows, with reset being balanced power distribution. It just resets it being down. That directly corresponds to the HUD, so I wouldn't recommend changing that. And I don't have an Oculus, so that has nothing to do with me. Cargo scoop is home. That's something that you will very rarely use. You can actually engage that manually through the HUD if you want. Jettison all cargo, I've never actually used that at all. That seems like a perfect key for it. Landing gear, that's a fine key. L is great. I don't actually have shield cells or chaff, so I can't tell you how useful those keys are. I kind of would like to turn this on at some point. I don't know what keys are available. There's so many things that are mapped. Let's see. I'll worry about that after. So, UI focus. Navigate the cockpit UI and open the target panel, comms panel. But its specific function depends on the UI focus mode setting. Right. Never actually used that. I think I tend to go with head look on mouse 3, which is the mouse wheel button. I tend to go with head look, and I manually look over to whichever panel I need to use. However, you can also use, to look directly at the target panel, you can press 1, or comms panel 2, or sensors panel 3, systems panel 4. You can press those to get a direct look at them. As far as I can tell... Actually, no, this... Yes, this zooms in, that's right. Left shift UI focus will zoom in a little bit. Hold it to inner focus mode. Right. I didn't know you could do that, however. Interesting. Learning new things here. So I have a key for Galaxy Map and for System Map. These can be manually opened from the target panel. However, whether you want to press 1 or whether you want to do head look, look to the left, look at the panel, and then select it. Either way, you can go to the Galaxy or System Map through those, but it's also helpful to have keys for both of them because you will be using them frequently. These are the keys that were suggested or set by default through the voice program, and I didn't feel like modifying that program, so I changed them in-game, and I'm happy with those keys. Those are things that, although you will be using them a lot, you're not going to be using them so frequently that it's a hassle to reach over to either of those keys. Never actually used that. I always hit escape. So interface mode, when you are looking at one of these panels, say the target panel, you use WSAD to move around them. If the panel has a tab, you use E and Q to move around them, and you use space to select something within the panels. Those, to my understanding, are default keys. I'm happy with those. I have no reason to want to change them. Right, so mouse head look. Simply, whenever I hit mouse 3, I'm able to use the mouse to actually move around and look around the cockpit. That is fine to me. I'm not quite sure what some... Obviously, I know what inverting is. What is default? No, I think I'm fine with that being off. What is button increments? Not entirely sure. I think I'm fine with those. I've been playing without worrying about that all this time, so it's not a problem now. These are just basic Galaxy Map controls. These are unrelated to the gameplay itself. I'm not going to waste time going through all of them, because there are a lot. There should be no reason to change them. And that would be all of the controls as I have them set up. I think it's very easy to play the game that way. It is not hard to play with a keyboard and mouse. It just takes a little bit of setting up from what I understand. I know a lot of people don't like the default keyboard and mouse controls, so I wanted to just run through what I have set up in hopes that it will help you out. So, thank you for tuning in, and I will catch you later.